And I just want to be clear for the listeners, we're not talking about people that are blind, okay, that need a seeing eye dog. We're talking about people that have gotten, I don't know if it has to be a psychiatrist or a therapist or what licensed professional can provide the letter, but just saying like, hey, I've got post-traumatic stress disorder and I need this animal. And because it's a disability, you're not permitted to charge a deposit. HUD just said, okay, law is still on the books. We're not going to enforce it. So,
Yeah. I mean, you can still have your
they're
ESA. You want to declare them as an assistant animal on the application, all fine and dandy there, but there still should be a deposit.
welcome to Silberman Realty's Property Desk Podcast, episode 13, where we talk about things residential real estate in Texas. Today is June 4th, 2026, and I'm Phil Silberman, owner of the company and your host, and I'm joined by my co-host today, Robert Vernon, who's a real estate agent with Silberman Realty. Robert, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How are you doing, Phil?
I'm doing great. You had back from a little vacation, I understand.
Yeah, a little R&R. You know, you got to do that every once in a while. You know, reset and rejuvenate, and I'm back and ready to rock and roll again.
Good. I'm glad. Vacations can be good as a reset, and we've got some interesting things on this show. We're going to be talking about an emotional service animal update, but maybe not really an update. And then we're going to answer some questions about tenant credit scores and more about pets. You know, the ESAs may not be considered a pet, but we'll talk about pets.
This is the animal show. The animal show.
The animal show. Just a circus. This show is going to be a circus, I can assure you. Managing expectations for single family home renters versus apartment renters. Yeah. All right, let's get it kicked off with ESA, emotional support animals. You had brought this to my attention and you said, okay, there's a new law that changes the way emotional support animals are treated. Okay, so that I did a little research on that, and it's sort of true, sort of not true. Okay, and I'll ask you about it.
Sure.
Right now, Now, here's what really happened. The state law in Texas, there's no new state laws in Texas on ESAs. It's still governed by the Texas Fair Housing Act. Emotional support animals are still classified as an assistance animal, which means you're not supposed to charge upfront pet deposits for them, okay? Now, however, and there's no new federal law either, but here's what happened. The Department of Housing or Urban Development, HUD, they just issued some new sweeping enforcement guidance that basically says we're not going to enforce this anymore. So if you file a complaint and you allege that your landlord charged a security deposit, HUD is saying, hey, we're not going to enforce it. The law hasn't changed, but under the old standard, if a landlord tried to charge a deposit, HUD would potentially find a violation and fine the landlord. New standard, that's not happening anymore. HUD has just sort of decided through its executive capacity that they're not going to enforce that law. So my question to you is do you think if you are a landlord, I mean, you've been a landlord, would you tell the tenant, hey, I don't care what the law says, and this isn't being enforced. I'm going to deny you if you don't pay a pet deposit? Or do you think the landlord should be more conservative? What do you think?
I feel like this has been a major issue for several years with the abuse of the ESA animal. It's quite obvious in a lot of cases if an animal is really an ESA or not. And a lot of times on applications, you don't get the information that they are an ESA animal. And then all of a sudden, when you approve them, they want to throw the document at you to avoid their deposit. Well, that to me is you're just trying to circumvent having to pay a deposit. This isn't a true ESA animal, true service animal. And it's been abused for a long time because it doesn't take much for somebody to get on the internet, find a therapist to write them a letter, which by law is what was needed to avoid the deposit. Now with HUD not being able to, or they don't want to enforce this anymore, probably because they got inundated with so much complaints and they just decided we're not going to pay attention to this anymore, leave it up to the discretion of the landlord. I personally would accept the animal, but require a deposit still on most of the, if it was me. You know,
Yeah.
you would have people like, I've got 3 cats and I have an ESA for all 3 of them. Well, that doesn't make sense. You don't really need 3 cats for your emotional support. Or if you work in a job, that doesn't require your animal there and you're there for like, 60 hours a week, doesn't make any sense to me. So,
Well, Robert, I can assure you that I've got 4 cats, and if I don't have the fourth with me at all times, I begin to break out
right.
into
I
tears.
think there's certain situations where it's like, they have a disabled son that needs their pet, there for them. And you got to take it case by case. You
Yeah.
can just, after running applications for 15 years, you almost can kind of tell when something's being abused or not. Um,
Yeah.
and each landlord's going to be different. I know landlords have been very, very upset with the fact that they just have to take in any animal without any additional deposit for as long as, I think we've been doing that for maybe 3 years where it's been enforced like that.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and I just want to be clear for the listeners. We're not talking about people that are blind, okay, that need a seeing eye dog. We're talking about people that have gotten. I don't know if it has to be a psychiatrist or a therapist or what licensed professional can provide the letter, but just saying like, hey, I've got post traumatic stress disorder, and I need this animal, and because it's a disability, you're not permitted to charge a deposit. HUD just said, okay, law is still on the books. We're not going to enforce it. So,
Yeah. I mean, you can still have your
they're,
ESA. You want to declare them as an assistant animal on the application, all fine and dandy there, but there still should be a
mm,
deposit. And a
mm,
tenant shouldn't be upset about it. If their animal really is going to be as good as they say they're going to be, we charge most of the time refundable pet deposits. And if you think your pet is good enough, then you should be able to get your money back at the end.
no. Well, I'm with you. I think the ESA situation has certainly been abused from a policy standpoint. Our management company, we still have to abide by the law. So I'm afraid we're still beholden to the law on the books, which is no deposit for emotional support animals. We're going to have to see some changes from the actual legislature before we're able to not charge deposits, because the policy can change on a dime with the HUD, especially if a new administration comes in and then all of a sudden, okay, no, we're enforcing it again, and then we have all these landlords that are now in violation. So,
Yeah, it's not real easy to
um,
find out either. I mean, I found that very weirdly when I saw that, and it wasn't very easily accessible information. And so if the law does change, I have to be looking for that specific, or I guess it's just, if HUD changes their guideline on it, you would have to kind of be looking for it.
yeah, not an easy thing. But all right, let's move on to our next question. Talking about credit scores when approving tenants. What credit score is too low? This kind of came up in a conversation where we were talking about, um, I think we set a policy, maybe 580 seemed like a really low number. I can't remember if it was below 580, if they could get a conditional higher security deposit or whatever. But is there a number to you that's just basically, too low
My
a credit
number too
score?
low right now is probably in the 520s. And that's
Yeah.
because the majority of our applicants do have scores in the mid fives to the low sixes.
Mm,
It is very,
mm,
very rare for me to get an applicant in the 700s.
mm,
But it doesn't always tell a full story, because your application can come in, your score looks at 530, and I look at the details, and it's student loan payments or it's medical debt or something that pulled you down, and your rental history is good. And when we check that out, your income is solid. You've been there for over a year. It checks out well. Someone like that, you're more likely to take a chance on, even with the lower
mm,
credit score. So you do have to take it case by case. It is not a one
mm,
size fits all. And if we took it as a one size fits all situation, you're going to end up denying so many people that could have ended up being decent tenants. And then your
mm.
vacancy rate's going to go up tremendously. So you really have to really take it case by case, applicant by applicant, to see if this person really is, fit to be within the property.
Yeah. Um, there are some red flags there. I mean, you're talking about, okay, 520, 500, that's just too low. It's an automatic denial. then you've got some obvious things like, let's never take an eviction. Let's never take
Right.
anybody with a broken lease.
Felony records,
Beside,
stuff like that. You're gonna always want to just like
yeah,
let those guys go. Sometimes the wife has bad credit, but the husband has great credit. And if the husband's the one making all the money and the wife's stay-at-home mom, why do I care if her credit's bad? Well, I don't want
yeah,
to get for a automatic denial if everything is good on the income earner. You know,
yeah. Well, two applicants definitely changed the situation. For me, some non-obvious red flags would maybe utility bills that have been missed. That's kind of a sign of missing core bills. When your score
yep,
gets 500 or below, you really have some serious payment problems. I think delinquency on credit card debt is okay. If you see recent delinquency on credit card debt where all the credit cards are now delinquent, that's kind of a flag for me.
big flag.
Um,
Yeah, speedy cash. People who get cash loans and then
yeah,
don't pay it
yeah,
back is one of the biggest red flags to me. When
yeah,
you see stuff like that.
yeah. Well, those are some good suggestions for red flags. But yeah, it's a situation where there is sort of a case by case analysis. I do think most management companies, especially in multifamily, they have some fairly formulaic approval standards. And the more properties you get and the more applications you're processing, it becomes almost an impossible task to try to manually kind of review every tenant without some very clear policies. You're also going to get into a very time consuming thing with the owners, back and forth. But sometimes it does make sense to kind of do a manual review. Um, all right, so let's go ahead and do our next question. Pets again. Everyone has pets now. I think more people have pets today than they did many years ago. How are owners currently feeling about pets? Do we have many owners that just will say, "Hey, no pets no matter what?"
We do have a few that do that. And then they learn really
Mhm,
quickly that they're not going to lease their property because the majority of people do have animals. For instance, I
mhm,
mean, I have one of our landlords who has been trying for 3 or 4 months to lease his property with pets, no pets allowed. And I've been trying to convince him to allow pets and he won't. Well, that's keeping you from getting the property leased. So it just depends on how, if you really want to put your foot down on that, you can, but you're going to have a hard time leasing your property. And you've got to have some bend there. I think the majority of the people, our landlords, are okay with dogs more so than cats. Cats is
mhm.
the one that we tend to have a lot of people try to shy away from, and I understand why. And I do myself. It's hard to want to accept cats. They're the more of a wild card in my opinion. They
Mhm.
pee in the carpets and stuff. It's real hard to alleviate the smell of a cat in a property, even on wood floors, more so than a dog.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be when I was doing a lot of leasing, everybody hated cats, and I guess that's still the feeling,
Still
right?
the
So,
feel, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
tough one with the cats.
There how about how many animals are too many? I mean, I kinda thought, any more than 2 animals is too many,
I
or is
try,
that the
and if
general?
you have more than two, it's like, oh, really? Now I'm really having to take a chance. That's a lot of animals, but sometimes people can think 4 or 5 kids can be just as destructive as to three
Mm,
cats or three dogs. So it just it comes down to the landlord and what their threshold is and what they feel about animals. I have some landlords that love animals. They don't care if they have 5 or 6 animals. It just
yeah.
but I feel like, yeah, the majority of them do understand that they have to have a pet policy in place. One thing that
Mhm,
we don't really allow at any point in time or pit bulls, um,
mhm.
or the other word they use for it, some kind of chef tired terrier. I can't remember exactly what they say.
The fancy name,
The
like,
fancy name to make people think that it's not a pit bull. I like pit bulls. I don't think they're bad animals. I want to just put that out there, but the insurance companies do not like them. And if there's an insurance
yeah,
claim and the insurance does not know about that animal being in the property, you have a good chance of you getting it denied on that claim, because you did not disclose that aggressive breed living in the property. I've ran into a lot of times where insurance companies will not insure a landlord if they know that they have an aggressive breed animal. Other ones like Rottweilers, Chow Chows is another one. So we try to always stay away from the aggressive breeds if possible. Sometimes smaller dogs, in my opinion, smaller dogs do worse damage than big dogs. Take a chance. You don't want a puppy. Obviously, if the dog's a little bit older, it's usually better. It's not going to chew anymore. So I mean, again, just like with anything, you kind of have to take them case by case. It's hard to blanketly just put something down on there.
I noticed that our aggressive breed list is certainly growing beyond pit bulls, German shepherds,
Right.
chows, and there's some other ones on there. I just updated that the other day, and I was fascinated to see how many dogs were now classified as aggressive breeds by insurance companies. So,
yeah, it's getting pretty. They find any way to try to deny your claims. They absolutely do.
All right, let's talk about expectations. So, tenant expectations, and how do they differ from an apartment? So if you have an apartment dweller and they're coming in and they're leasing single family housing for the first time, what's the, what's the difference? How would you characterize
Oh man,
that?
so it's pretty obvious when we have a tenant that comes from an apartment life to the single family life. They're used to having a maintenance person on staff at the building, coming changing light bulbs, water filters, air filters, all on at the request of a phone call. Oh, and we'll send our maintenance guy over. He'll knock on the door and replace it. It doesn't work like that in the single family world. You have to have a little bit more responsibility as a tenant to take care of the property. Your landlord most of the time is another individual like yourself. And the lease agreements are also written to this point where, you do have to take on a little bit more responsibility for the day-to-day maintenance items in a single family home. And you almost always can tell when somebody's coming from an apartment life because they immediately start thinking, oh, why are you not here fixing something, at 9 o'clock at night? I just put it in at 5 o'clock. Well, then this doesn't work like that in the single family world. You have to hire vendors. You got to get on the schedule. You got to be a little bit more patient on repairs. You don't have somebody on staff in the building to help you out. And that takes a little bit of education sometimes with these tenants that are making that switch from the multifamily to the single family life.
Yeah, it's very much like the ownership experience. I mean, if I own a property and yesterday I needed a plumber, or the day before, I've got to wait for that plumber to come out, 2 or 3 days for that to happen.
Right.
So,
and tenants get mad. I need it right now. I need it right now. Well, I mean, if you own the home, you wouldn't have been able to get them out that fast anyways. So I don't know what you're thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you have to wait a little bit for these guys to come out, these vendors to come out. All right, I've been your host, Phil Silberman. That brings our show to a close. And Robert Vernon has been my co-host. Like us, follow us, review us wherever you get your podcasts. And as a reminder, nothing in this show is to be considered legal advice or investment advice, and this has all been for entertainment purposes only. If you have a question about real estate, email us at info@silbermanrealty.com and tell us you want it publicly answered in the podcast. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Have a good one.